All right, so today we are taking a deep dive into something you might not expect.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at Mexican and Cuban music's influence on New Orleans jazz.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we've got some excerpts from an academic text here, all about cultural transmission in music, and honestly, it's fascinating stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out Mexican musicians were in New Orleans before jazz was even really a thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, so they were already there.
Hmm.
So, like, what kind of music were these Mexican musicians playing, especially, like, traveling up and down the Mississippi?
Well, so like starting in the 1880s, they were playing on the steamboats, right? They were traveling all up and down, and
Yeah.
they brought their music with them.
Of course.
And get this, the band of the 8th Cavalry Regiment
Wow.
of the Mexican Army
Okay.
with 67 musicians,
I see 7 musicians.
led by Encarnacion Payen.
Okay.
They inaugurated the World Industrial and Cotton Exposition in New Orleans
Wow.
on December 16th, 1884.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal.
Big deal.
67 musicians.
I know, can you imagine?
Yeah.
That would have been incredible to see.
Oh, yeah. I wonder what that must have sounded like.
Right.
So how did Cuban music get into this whole mix?
Well,
Because we're talking about New Orleans jazz.
yeah.
We got Mexican musicians. How does Cuba play into this?
Okay, well, it all comes back to like geography
Right.
and cultural exchange.
Right.
Mexico is part of the Caribbean basin, so Cuban music naturally kind of found its way there.
Okay.
We're talking about influences like going back to the 18th century.
Wow.
You have dances like the chichumbe.
Chuchumbe.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that one.
It's a very, think of very vibrant rhythms and syncopation elements that would later become like the hallmarks of Cuban music.
Okay.
And then in the 19th century, you've got the polka, the mazurka, the habanera, which is a Cuban dance with a very distinct rhythm.
Okay.
You got the danzón, even the son cubano, the precursor to salsa, right?
Wow.
It's all making its way into Mexico.
So all of this is influencing the Mexican music,
Right.
and then these Mexican musicians are going up to New Orleans.
Exactly.
So they're already playing a mix of these Cuban styles.
Exactly. They're like this conduit for
Right.
Cuban music to reach New Orleans.
So not just from Cuba itself,
Right. Not just directly.
but through Mexico.
Yeah, it adds another layer to this whole story of jazz.
Yeah, I like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's not as simple as many people think.
No, not at all.
So our source here highlights 2 key figures that really kind of exemplify this Cuban-Mexican New Orleans connection.
Okay.
Tell me about them.
So first, you have Sebastián Heredia, a Basque composer who spent quite a bit of time in Havana, Cuba.
Okay.
In 1859, he composed La Paloma,
Okay.
which is a habanera that became a massive hit.
A Paloma.
Yeah, especially with Mexican musicians.
I've heard of that song, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that backstory.
It's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
There's even a story about Emperor Maximilian of Mexico requesting it be played by the firing squad before his execution.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, but Heredia's influence goes even deeper.
Okay.
He also composed El Arreglito, which the French composer Bizet
Yeah.
adapted into the famous habanera from his opera Carmen.
Wow.
Okay.
So talk about legacy.
Yeah, it's really a very interesting...
Yeah.
Like, I've heard La Paloma so many times and never knew the backstory of it.
Right.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It makes you hear it differently.
Absolutely, yeah. So who's this second key figure?
Juventino Rosas,
Okay.
a Mexican violinist and composer.
Okay.
And according to his biographer, he actually toured the American South, including New Orleans, in 1885.
So he was actually there.
He was actually there.
Wow.
Imagine all the cultural exchange happening during that trip, right?
Yeah, it must have been incredible.
Different musical styles blending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for, like, our understanding of New Orleans jazz today? Well, it really challenges the idea that musical genres develop in isolation.
Yeah.
New Orleans jazz, from its very beginnings, was shaped by this blend of cultural influences.
Yeah.
Mexican and Cuban music playing a key role.
Yeah. Just shows you how music's always evolving.
Always evolving.
Yeah. Always.
Borrowing from different cultures.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really fascinating.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive.
Yeah.
I think we've learned that New Orleans jazz has roots that go way beyond the United States, reflecting a diverse mix of sounds and traditions.
Absolutely.
So here's a little something for you to think about, though.
Okay.
How might those Mexican and Cuban influences still be heard in New Orleans jazz today?
Mm.
You know, like, Go listen to some early jazz recordings or even contemporary New Orleans music
Right.
and see if you can hear those connections.
Yeah, good idea.
See if you can trace those threads.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. This was great. All right. That's our deep dive for today, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.